Lesson 1.1D, properties. So you should have seen most of these properties before. There may be one or two new ones. At the chart at the top of the page, it tells what the property is. It shows an example of it using arithmetic, meaning just numbers. And then it shows an example under algebra, meaning throwing in variables. So it can be either or maybe a combination of both, actually. So first of all, distributive property. Distributive property is where you have a number or a value in front of a set of parentheses, just like 5. And inside the parentheses, you have either an addition problem or a subtraction problem of two values. So under the arithmetic, our example is 5 times the quantity of 3 plus 4. To show distributive property, it means you distribute 5 through that parentheses by taking 5 times 3 plus 5 times 4. This sign, the plus sign, is the same sign that's in the parentheses. So if there was a minus in there, you would put a minus in there. The number on the outside of the parentheses, that's the one that you multiply by both of the numbers inside. When you guys are using distributive property, if you have to use it as a justification, go ahead and add this to your notes. You may abbreviate as DIST prop. I'm going to give you some abbreviations because you'll have to justify some things and tell what the property is that you're using. So DIST for distributive and prop. Next, we're going to look at commutative property. Okay, there's two of them, because commutative property works for addition and it also works for multiplication. When somebody commutes to work or commutes to school, they drive back and forth. So commutative property, think of it as going back and forth. You can go in either order and you get the same result. You commute it. So for commutative property of addition, they're saying you can have 5 plus 3, but it's the same as if you add 3 plus 5. You're still going to get 8 no matter which direction you go. That's commutative property of addition. Multiplication, exactly the same. 5 times 3 and 3 times 5, same result no matter what. So those two, the way that you're going to abbreviate is COMM for commutative, and then you can put a plus sign for commutative property of addition, or you could do COMM and then an X. I know we're not really supposed to use it anymore for multiplication, but we're going to in this case. So commutative of addition or commutative of multiplication. That is, adding and multiplying in either order gets you the same answer. Now we're going to switch to associative property. There's two of those as well. Associative property and associative of addition and of multiplication. Both of these deal with 3 values, and you have them grouped with parentheses. The associative property is doing a regrouping. So you shift the parentheses to make the problem simpler or just different. So notice associative property of addition, I'm adding 2 plus 3 plus 4 on both sides of the equal sign. It's just on the left they have the first two grouped in parentheses, and on the right they have the last two grouped in parentheses. They reassociate them so that you can add them or multiply them in a different order. And you'll see some problems why that makes sense, why you would even use associative property, because it makes the problem simpler by combining numbers that go together a little bit, maybe an even 10 or 20 or something like that. You'll see that in just a minute. So your abbreviation for those two, you're going to do for associative, ASSOC, and you can do plus for addition, and then ASSOC, multiplication. So an associative property of addition and associative property of multiplication. All right. Last but not least is the identities, and we have two. And the way that I help remember this, or try to help you remember this, when I say the identity, these two values do not change the identity of the number. Here's what I mean. The identity property of addition. If you add 0 to anything, does it change its value? No. So 0 itself is called the additive identity. So anytime you have something being added to 0, you really know that it didn't change its value. So that you're going to write as add ID. Adding a 0 doesn't change the identity of the number. And the last one is another identity, but it's using multiplication. So if you multiply by 1, that doesn't change the value. So the multi-ID, multiplicative identity, you multiply by 1, it doesn't change its value. 1 is the multiplicative identity. All right, I know that's a lot of information, but you have seen some of those before, I realize. Have you seen distributive property before? Is that one new? So we're going to look at that one actually first. So let's look at this example right here. It says, use distributive property to write 6 times the quantity 4 plus 3 as an equivalent expression and then evaluate. So 6 is in front of the parenthesis to show distributive. This is what you will have to do when it says use distributive to evaluate. You take 6 times 4, use the sign that's inside there, plus 6 times 3. So you rewrite it as 6 times 4 plus 6 times 3. You evaluate each of those parts. 6 times 4 is 24 and 6 times 3 is 18. Combine it together, you evaluate it, it's 42. Distributive property is taking whatever's outside and distributing it through the parentheses. Looking at some of the other properties, in example 2, if you're showing 5 times 4 equals 4 times 5, it is commuting it. It is multiplying in either order to get the same answer. That would be commutative property of multiplication. 12 plus 0 is 12. You're adding a number that doesn't change the identity. That's the additive identity. And then the last one, I have 7 plus 6 plus 3 and 7 plus 6 plus 3. It's just they are regrouped or reassociated. So associative property of addition. We're going to do one now. Somebody in here is going to do this one. Number 1, you were supposed to have written down, use the distributive property to rewrite each expression, then evaluate it. So I want to refresh your memory right here. It's the same directions, and see how we did this one. You distribute that through. That's what you're supposed to do down here with number 1. So Layla, are you doing number 1? So 5 times the quantity 7 plus 2, but it says rewrite it. So how would we rewrite that? Nope. You're supposed to rewrite it just like we did up here. 5 times 7, what's operations in the parentheses? Plus, and then check out this one up here so that you see what they did. You distribute it all the way through. So 5 times 7 plus, not just 2. It's 5 times 7 plus, what did we do with the, look at this one that's I'm talking about up here. It was 6 times 4 plus 3. So 5 times 7 plus, we took 5 times 7, and now we need to take 5 and do what with it? Now 5 times 2. What is 5 times 7? 35. And what is 5 times 2? 10. So a total of 45. All right, so we better practice this a little bit more. Number 3, who wants to try this? 2 times parentheses 6 plus 7. Ava, what is it? 2 times 6 plus 2 times 7. Good. You take 2 times 6 and then 2 times 7. What's 2 times 6, Ava? 12. What's 2 times 7? And then go ahead and add 12 and 14. 26. All right, I want to do another distributive property while we're here. This one right here. Somebody rewrite 6 times 3 plus 2. Who is that up there? Corey? 6 plus 3 times 6 times 3 plus 6 times 2, which would be 18 plus 12, 30. All right, for the sake of doing this, it says evaluate these expressions mentally and justify each step. So number 9, it says 1 times 20. 1 times 20. So what is the answer and what justifies that? Logan, what's the answer? 20. Can you tell me what property justifies that? Which one can you multiply by a 1 and it doesn't change the value?
Identity property of multiplication.
Right. So for your homework, you could write multi-ID. Multiplicative identity. All right, and number 11, 0 plus 3. What can we do with that one? 0 plus 3, Riley?
0 plus 3 would equal 3.
3, and what property?
That would be
Add identity. Yep, very good. So your assignment is on the skills practice, but there's a couple of them I want to show you, and I just want to explain. At the top, it says use distributive property to rewrite each expression and then evaluate it. So you for sure would have to make sure you rewrite these. So even if the 5 is on the outside but in the back, it would be just like writing it in front. And you would go 5 times 2 plus 5 times 7. And you're evaluating, so 10 plus 35 equals 45. All right, the section at the bottom where you evaluate mentally and justify each step, you should tell what properties involved, just like we said on number 1 like 10, where you're taking 18 times 1. And we know that the answer is 18. Make sure you do multi-ID. If it's better to, when there's 3 things like this, maybe to reassociate. You would say associative property. But a lot of these, again, you can evaluate mentally. You just tell which property is the best. Some of these, it's better to maybe take the 5 times the 10. So you're going to switch some things around to multiply. 5 times 10 would be 50 times your 18, which would be, or no, I take that back. Hold on. All right, scratch that. You would probably be better off to take 10 times 18. So reassociate, and then you get 180, and then take that times 5.